Okay, let's talk about it. Method acting. You've definitely heard the term, you've for sure heard the wild stories, but what is it really? Is it the absolute peak of artistic commitment, or has it just become a convenient excuse for some pretty awful behavior on set?
This quote from Robert Pattinson, it just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly sums up how we all kind of see method acting these days. When you hear about it, it's almost never for a role where someone's playing a nice, normal person. It's always for something a little more intense.
And that's something else often leads to stories that have come to define the whole idea for us. For example, I'm sure we've all heard the one about Jared Leto sending live rats to his co-stars while they were making Suicide Squad.
But wait, it didn't even stop there. He also mailed them used bullets. You just have to ask yourself, at what point does getting into character officially cross the line into, being an actual workplace hazard?
And then you've got the stuff that just brings the whole production to a grinding halt. For his part in Morbius, his dedication to limping everywhere, even for bathroom breaks, held up the entire crew, turning a simple trip to the restroom into a 45-minute ordeal. So yeah, all of this has basically turned what was once a really respected acting technique into a total PR nightmare. It's pretty much become synonymous with actors tormenting their cast and crew, all in the name of the process.
And here's the really crucial point. All these actions, which get framed as commitment, they just created a hostile, uncomfortable environment for everybody else trying to do their job. And for what, really? In the case of Suicide Squad, it was for about 10 minutes of screen time in a movie that got pretty much universally panned. The disruption just seems so completely out of proportion with the actual result.
Which really makes you wonder, was this ever the point? What if I told you that the original idea behind the method was something way more subtle, totally emotional, and completely internal? With 0 dead pigs required.
To figure out how we ended up here, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. We're talking early 20th century, a theater in Russia where this totally radical new idea about performance was taking shape.
It all started with this guy, Konstantin Stanislavski. See, at a time when acting was all about big, showy gestures and faking emotion, he proposed something revolutionary. He said, what if actors actually felt something? His system was all about using your own memories to find a real emotional truth. The goal was 100% internal, to believe you are the character, not just pretend to be them.
And you can literally trace this technique's journey from the stage to the screen. It traveled from Russia all the way to America, where teachers like Stella Adler and Lee Strasberg adapted it. And that's what created what we now call the method. And then a new generation of actors, Marlon Brando, Robert De Niro, they brought that incredible intensity to the movies, and they changed Hollywood forever.
And this slide just perfectly illustrates that huge shift. The original method was all about doing your homework. Brando lived in a veterans hospital to understand paralyzed soldiers. De Niro got a real taxi license and drove a cab in New York for a month. This was deep, immersive research. Now compare that to today's antics, which often feel less like internal work and more like a performance of disruption that affects everybody else.
This brings us to probably the most respected and also the most controversial modern method actor, the legend himself, Daniel Day-Lewis. He's the person everyone points to when they want to defend the method, and for good reason. His performances are incredible, but his process? Well, that's a whole other story. So for his Oscar-winning role in My Left Foot, he played an artist with cerebral palsy. To stay in character, he refused to leave his wheelchair for the entire shoot. Now this meant that crew members, who are not paid extra for this stuff, had to carry him around, wheel him between takes, and even spoon-feed him his meals.
And as actor John Bernthal points out here, this brings up a huge question. When does an actor's artistic process just become everyone else's burden? It's pretty safe to say Stanislavski probably didn't imagine his technique would lead to crew members having to act as personal caretakers for an able-bodied actor.
From there, it seems like the focus for many actors shifted from that internal, emotional work to these extreme, often dangerous, physical transformations. It became a kind of badge of honor to see just how far you could push your body for a role.
And absolutely no one embodies this more than Christian Bale. Look at this. For The Machinist, he dropped down to a skeletal 120 pounds, supposedly by just living on an apple and a can of tuna a day. And then, right after that, he had to bulk up to 220 pounds of pure muscle to play Batman. It's an incredible feat, for sure, but it is also incredibly dangerous.
Right, and this pressure to transform your body to win awards became a whole industry expectation.
something actors felt they had to do. Jake Gyllenhaal is hilarious here, pointing out just how absurd this whole suffer for your art to win an award pipeline really became.
But as we're going through all these stories, the onset antics, the extreme transformations, have you started to notice a pattern? I mean, who do we mostly hear these stories about?
Natalie Portman put it absolutely perfectly. There is a massive double standard at play here. The kind of behavior that gets a male actor called a committed genius would get a female actor labeled difficult or a diva. No question.
This table really just lays it all out. A man inconveniences the crew, he's a serious artist. A woman does the same thing, she'd be seen as unprofessional. A man can isolate himself from his family for months and be praised for his dedication. For many women, especially mothers, that is just not even a remote possibility.
So it's not surprising at all that this extreme version of the method has sparked a growing backlash from inside the industry itself. We're talking about some of the most respected actors on the planet who are now speaking out against it.
And what you hear from so many of these amazing performers is a shared belief that great acting doesn't require you to throw professionalism and basic decency out the window. Martin Freeman calls this whole approach pretentious nonsense. Anthony Hopkins calls it self-indulgent. And Emma Thompson's take is just perfectly blunt. You just act.
This legendary piece of advice, supposedly from Sir Laurence Olivier to a young Dustin Hoffman who'd stayed up for days just to play a tired character, it really is the perfect final word on all this. I mean, the craft is called acting for a reason.
So ultimately, it brings us to this final thought. The original method was all about finding an emotional truth, not creating chaos. So maybe it's time we stop glorifying the process and just focus on the result. Maybe we should stop confusing difficult behavior with genius and just call it what it is. Either it's good acting, or it's just an excuse for being a bad coworker.